I was 31 years old when I found out my name had already been crossed out of my family's future. Not metaphorically, literally. I didn't hear it in a courtroom or read it in a letter. I heard it through a speakerphone left on a kitchen counter in a house I helped pay for but was no longer welcome in. "You don't need to tell her yet," my mother said. "Let the paperwork settle first." That was the moment everything stopped making sense. Before I take you back to how I ended up standing frozen in that kitchen, listening to my own erasure like background noise, let me say this. If you're drawn to stories about betrayal that hides behind family smiles, about quiet revenge and karma that doesn't rush but never forgets, take a second to like and subscribe. And if this kind of story feels familiar, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every comment. Now let me rewind. My name is Claire Whitman. I'm a senior compliance analyst at a logistics firm in Chicago, Illinois. I was 31 at the time this started, child-free by choice, financially stable, and, according to my family, doing just fine on my own. That phrase would come up a lot, always when they needed something, never when I needed anything back. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early December. December 6th, to be exact. I remember because I had just finalized a quarterly audit that saved my company $2.3 million in penalties. My manager, a woman named Denise Porter, shook my hand and said, "This is promotion-level work." I didn't even have time to enjoy it. My phone buzzed. Mom. My mother, Elaine Whitman, didn't call to chat. She called when something needed fixing. "Claire," she said without a greeting, "are you free this weekend?" I already knew what that meant. My parents' house was in Naperville, about 40 minutes from my apartment if traffic behaved. It was the same house I'd grown up in, the same one my parents refinanced twice after I graduated college. The same one I quietly helped cover when things got tight. "What's going on?" I asked. "It's nothing," Elaine said, which always meant it was something. "Your father just wants to talk. It would mean a lot if you came." My father, Richard Whitman, rarely asked for anything directly. He let Elaine do the asking. He did the sighing in the background. "I can come Saturday," I said. "Just for a few hours." "Good," she replied, relieved too quickly. "Your brother will be here too." That should have been my first warning. My younger brother, Lucas Whitman, was 28 and permanently in transition. New ideas, new ventures, new excuses. He moved back home 3 years earlier, temporarily, after his startup failed. Then another failed. Then another. Somehow, the family vocabulary shifted. Lucas was finding himself. I was too busy. Saturday came cold and gray. The kind of Midwest winter day that makes everything feel unfinished. When I walked into the house, Elaine hugged me tightly, the way she did when she was already defensive. "You look tired," she said, stepping back to scan me. "You work too much." "You say that every time I look calm," I replied. She laughed, a little too sharply. Richard was in the living room, pretending to read the paper. Lucas was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, shoes still on. "Hey," he said, not looking up. I sat at the dining table, the same one where I'd done homework, paid bills, and once signed paperwork guaranteeing a loan I was never supposed to be responsible for. Elaine poured coffee for everyone. She didn't ask how my job was. She never did, unless it related to money. "So," she said, sitting down, "your father and I have been thinking about the future." That phrase tightened something in my chest. Richard cleared his throat. "We're not getting any younger." Lucas finally looked up. "Mom, just tell her." Elaine shot him a look, then turned back to me with a smile that felt rehearsed. "We're updating our estate plans," she said. "You know, the will. Just being responsible." I nodded slowly. "Okay." "We met with an attorney," she continued. "A very good one. Thomas Keller, downtown." The name meant nothing to me. It should have. Richard folded the paper. "The idea is to keep things efficient." There was a pause. Not accidental. Strategic. "And because you're so independent," Elaine added, "we've decided to leave the house to Lucas." The words landed quietly. No drama, no apology, just a statement. I waited for the rest of the sentence. "That's it?" I asked. Elaine tilted her head. "Claire, you're successful. You don't need it." Lucas shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. He didn't look at me. "And me?" I asked. "We've allocated some assets," Richard said carefully. "Investments, Smaller things. How much? I asked. Elaine waved her hand. We don't have the numbers finalized. That was when my phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Promotion review meeting, Monday. I stood up. So you're giving Lucas the house? He lives here, Elaine said. You moved out years ago. I laughed once, quietly. I also paid for the roof. And the furnace. And half the property taxes last year. Elaine's smile hardened. That was your choice. I picked up my coat. We didn't mean to upset you, Richard said. You didn't, I replied. You clarified things. I left before anyone could stop me. I didn't know then that the will had already been drafted, that the signatures were already in progress, that the conversation I'd just had was never about my input. I found out the truth 2 weeks later, standing in that same kitchen, invisible again, while my name disappeared for good. And that's where the real story begins. I didn't confront them after that Saturday. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask for clarifications or spreadsheets or reassurance. That was the first thing that surprised me about myself. I went quiet instead. For years, silence had been something done to me. Decisions made without me. Plans adjusted around me. Praise given elsewhere. But this time, the silence was mine. Chosen. Controlled. On Monday morning, I sat in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the Chicago River, while Denise Porter slid a single-page document across the table. Senior Director track, she said. If you want it. The number at the bottom was clean and exact. A base increase of $42,000. A bonus structure tied to performance. Stock options vesting over 4 years. I nodded once. I want it, she smiled. Good. You earned it. I didn't tell my family. Not that week. Not the next. That omission felt heavier than I expected. For a long time, I'd been trained to report good news upward, like proof of usefulness. This time, I kept it to myself. I wanted to see what happened when I stopped feeding the machine. 3 days later, Elaine Whitman called. Claire, she said, voice overly light. Did you forget to transfer the December amount? There it was. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the river. Barges moving slowly, deliberately. No rush, no panic. I didn't forget, I said. Silence. Richard's cough in the background. The sound of a TV muted, but still on. Well, Elaine said carefully, it hasn't come through. I know. Another pause. Longer this time. You usually send it by the 1st, she said. I usually do. And I'm reviewing my finances, I replied. I'll let you know. Her tone sharpened. Reviewing them how? The old version of me would have explained, would have softened the edges, would have reminded her of obligations I never formally agreed to, but always honored anyway. Instead, I said, I have a meeting. I'll call you later. I hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, Lucas texted me. Hey, Mom's kind of freaking out. Did something happen? I stared at the message longer than necessary. I typed, then erased. Typed again. I'm fine, just busy. A lie. But a small one. By Friday, the pressure shifted. Elaine showed up at my apartment, unannounced. She stood in the hallway, coat still on, purse clutched tight, eyes already scanning for signs of excess. New furniture, new art. Something she could silently resent. You didn't answer my calls, she said. I was working. She stepped inside, anyway. You can't just stop helping without warning, she said, as if we were discussing a cable bill. I closed the door behind her. Helping with what? She blinked. You know what. I want you to say it. Her lips pressed together. The monthly support. I nodded. Right. You know your father's medical bills haven't gone down, she continued. And Lucas is still getting back on his feet. I crossed my arms. How long is getting back on his feet supposed to take? That's not fair, she snapped. He's trying. So am I, she exhaled sharply. Claire, don't do this. Do what? This thing where you pretend you're the victim. The words landed softly, familiar, worn smooth from use. I'm not pretending anything, I said. I'm asking questions. She laughed without humor. Questions now. After all these years. Yes, I replied. Now. Elaine paced once, then stopped. You're upset about the will. I didn't deny it. That has nothing to do with this, she said quickly. Too quickly. It has everything to do with this, I said. I've contributed for years, quietly, consistently. And when you planned your future, I wasn't even a discussion." She shook her head. "You're twisting things." "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing them straight." She looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You don't need help," she said. "You're strong. Lucas needs us." "And I don't?" I asked. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But it was enough. "You've always managed," she said. There it was. The sentence that had shaped everything. I nodded slowly. "I have." Elaine softened her tone. "We're family, Claire. We don't keep score." I met her eyes. "You already did. I just didn't know it." She left soon after, visibly unsettled. Not angry, not apologetic, just confused. As if a familiar object had moved slightly, and she couldn't explain why. That night, I pulled out a folder I'd been adding to for years without realizing it. Bank statements, wire confirmations, emails with phrases like, "just this once," and "temporary," and "we'll make it up to you." The total made my chest feel hollow. $412,000. That was what I'd sent my parents since I was 24. Not including the things that never showed up on paper, the favors, the guarantees, the quiet fixes. I didn't cry. I made a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, reasons given, patterns. It told a story no one else wanted to read. On Sunday evening, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Elaine. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Claire Whitman?" a man asked. "Yes, my name is Thomas Keller," he said. "I'm the attorney working on your parents' estate." My stomach tightened. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause. Professional, measured. "I have a question regarding a financial instrument that appears to involve you," he said. "And I think you should be aware of how your name is being used." I sat down slowly. "I'm listening," I said. What he told me next explained everything. And it made one thing very clear. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd built the plan on my back. Thomas Keller spoke the way men do when they're trying not to step into a lawsuit. Careful, neutral, precise. "Before we go any further," he said, "I need to confirm something. You are not, and have never been, a co-owner of the Naperville property, correct?" "Correct," I said. "And you never signed a formal loan agreement with your parents?" "No." Another pause. Keyboard clicks in the background. "Then I need to be very clear," he continued. "Your parents have represented recurring deposits from your account as informal family gifts. However, they also listed those same deposits as evidence of ongoing financial dependence when petitioning for a revised estate structure." I closed my eyes. "So," I said slowly, "they used my money to justify cutting me out." "That's a simplified way to put it," Keller replied. "But yes, functionally." I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt organized. "How exactly was my name used?" I asked. "In two ways," he said. "First, to demonstrate that you are financially independent and therefore not in need of real property. Second, to establish a pattern of voluntary contribution that suggested no expectation of return." I pictured Elaine at my kitchen table, coffee untouched, saying we don't keep score. "What about taxes?" I asked. "That's where it becomes complicated," Keller said. "Some of the transfers were categorized inconsistently. Gifts one year, loans another. In at least one filing, they were referenced as household income." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Is that legal?" "It depends," he said carefully, "on intent, documentation, and whether anyone challenges it." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The story I'd been telling myself for years was simple. I helped because I could. I gave because family does. There was no contract, no expectation. That story fell apart the moment I realized someone else had been writing footnotes behind my back. That night, I slept for exactly 2 hours. By morning, something had settled. Not rage, not grief, resolve. I took a personal day and drove to Naperville, not to confront them. Not yet. I went to the county records office. The clerk was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and immaculate nails. Her badge read, "Mary Ann Fell." "I'm looking for property records for 421 Willow Crest Drive," I said. She typed, nodded, printed. The documents were thin, clean, exactly what you'd expect. Then I asked for liens. She paused, typed again. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Did you want copies of all filings?" she asked. Yes. She slid a thicker packet across the counter. Second mortgage. Taken out 18 months earlier. Purpose. Business capital. My brother's business. Lucas's name wasn't on the loan. Elaine and Richard's were. But the repayment schedule lined up perfectly with the months my transfers increased. I sat in my car afterward and let that sink in. They didn't just lean on me, they leveraged me. That evening, Lucas called. "Why are you digging around?" he asked, without preamble. I smiled faintly. "I'm curious. Is that a crime?" "You went to the county office," he said. "Mom saw your car." "Then she should have said, hello." He exhaled. "You're making things weird." "I didn't start that." "Claire," he said, dropping the defensive tone. "You know they did what they had to do. For you," I replied. "For the family." I laughed softly. "Same difference to you." He didn't deny it. "You've always landed on your feet," Lucas said. "This isn't going to ruin you." I thought about that word. Ruin. "No," I said. "It won't." "What do you want?" he asked. I considered the question honestly. "I want the truth," I said. "And I want my name out of whatever you're building." There was a long silence. "You're overreacting," he said finally. "This isn't some conspiracy." "Then you won't mind if I speak to Thomas Keller directly," I said. The silence stretched. "You already did," he said flatly. "Yes," I replied. "And now I'm speaking to someone else." "Who?" "A lawyer of my own." That was a lie. For now. He hung up without another word. The next morning, Elaine left me 3 voicemails. The first was confused. The second was irritated. The third was controlled anger wrapped in concern. "We raised you better than this," she said. I didn't respond. Instead, I called a firm recommended by Denise Porter. Corporate litigation, estate disputes, clean reputations. The attorney I met with was named Margaret Liu, early 40s, calm, surgical. She read my spreadsheet without interrupting. Then she asked, "Do you want to burn this down or correct the record?" "Correct it," I said. "Publicly if necessary, but clean." She nodded. "Good. That gives us leverage." "For what?" "For timing," she said. "And timing is everything." She explained my options. None of them involved shouting. All of them involved paper. Demand letters, accounting requests, formal reclassification of funds, a quiet challenge to the will that would force disclosure. "You don't need to win everything," Margaret said. "You just need daylight." I signed the engagement letter. On my way out, she added, "One more thing. If they're planning something public, you'll want to move first." "Like what?" I asked. She looked at me. "A wedding, a sale, a holiday announcement." That night, Elaine called again. Her voice was honeyed. "Careful. We should all sit down," she said. "Before Christmas. Clear the air." I pictured the dining table, the coffee cups, the practiced smiles. "Sure," I said. "Christmas works." She exhaled, relieved. "We're so proud of you," she added quickly. "You know that, right?" I looked out at the city lights. "I know," I said. And for the first time, I understood exactly what that pride cost. Christmas was 3 weeks away. They thought they were planning a celebration. They had no idea they were setting the stage, and I wasn't going to stop them. Christmas at my parents' house had always been a performance. The same wreath on the door, the same classical playlist on low volume. Elaine Whitman believed consistency looked like stability. She believed presentation could substitute for truth. This year, the house smelled like cinnamon and something sweeter underneath. Nerves, maybe. I arrived just after noon on Christmas Eve. Snow dusted the lawn lightly, enough to look intentional. Lucas's car was already in the driveway, a newer one. I noted that without comment. Elaine greeted me with a hug that lingered half a second too long. "I'm so glad you came," she said. "I was worried you'd be busy." "I made time," I replied. Richard Whitman nodded from the living room, eyes flicking briefly toward me, then away. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly. Lucas stood near the tree, phone in hand, restless. "Hey," he said. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," I echoed. Presents were stacked neatly, labeled in Elaine's careful handwriting. I noticed my name appeared only twice. Lucas's pile was larger. He didn't pretend not to notice. We sat down for lunch. Elaine talked about neighbors, about traffic, about how expensive groceries had gotten. No one mentioned the will. No one mentioned money. That was the new strategy. silence as denial. Halfway through the meal, Elaine cleared her throat. "Oh," she said lightly. "I almost forgot. We have exciting news." Lucas straightened. Richard shifted in his chair. I took a sip of water. Elaine smiled wide. "Lucas is engaged." Lucas beamed. "Yeah, to Natalie Brooks. You haven't met her yet. She's amazing." I nodded. "Congratulations." "Thank you," he said, relieved. "We're planning a small wedding, late spring." Elaine reached for his hand. "And since they'll need a place to start their life together, we've decided to transfer the house to Lucas early. As a wedding gift." There it was. Neat. Festive. Wrapped in good news. I set my glass down carefully. "That's generous," I said. Elaine's shoulders relaxed. "We thought so." "And the paperwork?" I asked. "Already in motion?" Her smile faltered just slightly. "Well, yes. Thomas has everything ready." "Thomas Keller, of course." Lucas avoided my eyes. I looked around the table. The candles, the decorations, the practiced calm. "How much of the mortgage is left?" I asked. Elaine stiffened. "That's not relevant." "It is if my name is attached to it," I said. Silence. Richard cleared his throat. "Claire, is my name attached to it?" I repeated. Elaine's voice sharpened. "You're ruining the moment." "I'm clarifying it," I said. "There's a difference." Lucas frowned. "What are you talking about?" I turned to him. "The second mortgage. The one taken out 18 months ago." His face went blank. Elaine stood abruptly. "This is not the time." "Actually," I said calmly, "it's the perfect time." I reached into my bag and placed a thin folder on the table. Copies. Clean. Organized. Elaine stared at it like it might explode. "I went to the county office," I continued. "I spoke to an attorney. I learned how my transfers were categorized, how they were used." Richard's hands trembled slightly. Lucas flipped through the pages, faster than necessary. "This is bullshit," he muttered. "It's public record," I replied. Elaine's voice rose. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said. "My name was used. My money was used. My consent was never requested." Natalie Brooks chose that moment to speak. She'd been quiet until then, sitting beside Lucas, observant. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "Can someone explain what's happening?" Lucas looked at her. "It's nothing." I met her eyes. "It's something. And you deserve to know." Elaine cut in. "This is family business." Natalie didn't look away from me. "I'm marrying into this family." I nodded. "Then you should understand the structure." Elaine laughed, sharp and brittle. "Structure? This isn't a corporation." "No," I agreed. "It's worse. There are no disclosures." I turned to Richard. "Did you know the money I sent was listed as household income?" He didn't answer. "Did you know it was cited to justify excluding me from the estate?" I asked. His silence was answer enough. Natalie's expression shifted. Not outrage. Calculation. "Lucas," she said quietly. "Is this true?" He swallowed. "It's complicated." "It's documented," I said. Elaine slammed her hand on the table. "Enough." I stood. "I didn't come here to argue," I said. "I came to inform you." Elaine's eyes narrowed. "Of what?" "That I've retained counsel," I said. "And that any transfer of assets involving funds traced to me will be formally challenged." Lucas shot to his feet. "You can't do that." "I can," I replied. "And I will." Elaine pointed at me, shaking. "After everything we've done for you." I looked at her. Really looked. "You taught me to be responsible," I said. "This is me being responsible." Natalie stood as well. "We need to go." Lucas stared at her. "What?" "I said we need to go," she repeated. "Now." She turned to me. "Thank you for telling me." I nodded once. They left without another word. The house felt colder immediately. Elaine sank into her chair. "You've destroyed this family." "No," I said. I stopped pretending. Richard finally spoke. "What do you want, Claire?" I thought about that. "I want my name removed from anything that benefits Lucas," I said. "I want my contributions reclassified accurately. And I want the truth reflected in the will." Elaine laughed hollowly. "You think you can force that?" I smiled faintly. "No, I think you'll choose it." She stared at me. "Why would we?" she demanded. "Because," I said, "the alternative is discovery. Depositions. A public record that doesn't care about Christmas." Her face drained of color. I picked up my coat. "This isn't revenge," I added. It's accounting. As I stepped outside, snow began to fall harder. Behind me, the door closed slowly. Inside that house, something was unraveling. And for the first time, it wasn't me. After Christmas, the calls stopped. Not immediately. Elaine Whitman tried twice more in the following week. Short messages, neutral tone. Let's talk. This has gone far enough. We can fix this. I didn't respond. Silence, I was learning, made people reveal priorities faster than confrontation ever did. On January 3rd, Margaret Liu sent the first formal letter. It was polite, clinical, precise. A request for a full accounting of funds transferred from my accounts to Elaine and Richard Whitman over the last 7 years. A demand that those funds be reclassified pending review. Notice that any asset transfer tied to those funds should be paused immediately. No accusations. No threats, just daylight. 3 days later, Thomas Keller replied. His tone had changed. He requested an extension, cited the holidays, administrative delays, the usual. Margaret granted 5 business days. No more. On the 4th day, Lucas showed up at my office. Not reception, not security. He waited in the lobby like he belonged there. "Can we talk?" he asked when I stepped out of the elevator. I looked at him. The tailored coat, the new watch, the faint edge of panic behind his eyes. "We are talking," I said. "Not like this," he replied. "Not through lawyers." "That was your choice," I said. "You benefited from it." He followed me outside, into the cold. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said. "Natalie's parents are asking questions. About the house. About timing." "That sounds like a problem," I said. "For you. She's starting to think the wedding should be delayed." I stopped walking. "That," I said, "sounds like information you should share with your parents." He exhaled sharply. "Claire, just tell them you're backing off." I smiled faintly. "Why would I do that?" "Because we're family," he snapped. "Because this is blowing up everything." "Yes," I said. "It is." He stared at me, finally understanding something he'd never needed to understand before. I wasn't fixing it. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. "You accepted it," I replied. "Every month." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I turned and went back inside. That night, Elaine sent a longer message. It wasn't angry, it was wounded. I read it once. Then again. "You've always been sensitive. You take things personally. We did what we thought was fair. You never said you expected anything in return. You're punishing us for assumptions you never corrected." I forwarded it to Margaret. Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Good. This establishes intent." 2 weeks passed. Then, Richard Whitman called. His voice sounded older, thinner. "Claire," he said, "I need to talk to you. Alone." We met at a diner halfway between my apartment and their house, a place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like compromise. He sat across from me, hands folded. "I should have said something years ago," he said. I waited. "Your mother, she handles things," he continued. "I let her." "Yes," I said. "You did." He looked at me, eyes wet. "I didn't think it would go this far." "It always does," I replied. "When no one stops it." He nodded slowly. "Elaine is scared," he said. "She thinks you're trying to take everything." I took a sip of coffee. "I'm trying to correct the record. She won't see it that way. That's not my responsibility." He leaned forward. "What would it take for you to drop this?" I met his gaze. The truth, in writing. And my name restored where it belongs. He swallowed. "Elaine won't agree." "Then this continues," I said. He sat back, defeated. As we stood to leave, he hesitated. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." I nodded. I know it wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't nothing. The following Monday, Margaret called me early. "They filed the accounting," she said. And it's worse than we thought." She sent the documents over. Elaine had categorized some transfers as gifts, others as loans, and a few as reimbursements for expenses that never existed. Lucas's business expenses appeared repeatedly. Rent, equipment, travel. My name appeared nowhere, except as a source. "They used you as a shadow balance sheet," Margaret said. "Off the books." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "we respond." She drafted a second letter. Firmer, clearer. It included one additional request. A temporary injunction to halt the transfer of the Naperville house, pending resolution. The response came within hours. Not from Thomas Keller. From Elaine. She showed up at my apartment again. This time, she didn't knock. "I raised you better than this," she said the moment I opened the door. "You raised me to be careful," I replied. "This is careful." "You're humiliating us," she snapped. "People are talking." "Good," I said. "They should." She stepped closer. "If you do this, you won't be welcome anymore." I met her eyes. I already wasn't. She froze. "You think you're winning," she said quietly, "but you don't know everything." "That's true," I said, "but I know enough." She turned to leave, then stopped. "There's a family meeting," she said. "Next Sunday. Everyone will be there." I raised an eyebrow. "Including Natalie?" Elaine's lips tightened. "Yes, then I'll be there," I said. She smiled. Not kindly. "Good," she said, "because once this is over, things will be very different." I closed the door behind her. Margaret's words echoed in my head. If they're planning something public, move first. Whatever Elaine had planned, it wasn't reconciliation. It was containment. And containment only works if the truth stays small. Next Sunday, it wouldn't. And neither would I. Elaine Whitman chose her timing carefully. Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock, after church, before dinner. A window designed to feel moral and reasonable. The invitation went out by group text. "A family meeting. Important. Please come." No agenda. That omission was deliberate. I arrived early, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to watch who came in and how. The living room was arranged like a negotiation table. Chairs pulled closer, coffee already poured, tissues placed strategically on the side table. Elaine believed in props. Richard Whitman sat stiffly in his armchair, hands folded, eyes down. Lucas paced near the window, phone in hand. Natalie Brooks stood beside him, quiet, observant. She wore no engagement ring. That detail mattered. Elaine entered last, carrying a folder I recognized. Thick, manila, overused. "Thank you all for coming," she said, taking her seat. "This is about family." I waited. She turned to me. "Claire, I think we should start with you." Of course. She expected emotion, apology, retreat. "What would you like me to say?" I asked. Her lips pressed together. "Why are you doing this?" I looked around the room, at the faces, at the history layered into every wall. "I stopped pretending," I said. "That's all." Lucas scoffed. "You're tearing us apart over paperwork?" "No," I replied. "Over truth." Elaine opened her folder. "We never hid anything from you." I smiled faintly. "Then this will be easy." I slid a second folder onto the coffee table. Margaret Liu's work. Copies of transfers. Cross-referenced. Highlighted. Annotated. Elaine's eyes flicked over it. Her jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. "My records," I said. "And yours." Natalie leaned forward. "Can someone explain what these numbers mean?" Elaine waved her hand. "It's irrelevant." "It's not," Natalie said calmly. Lucas shifted. "Nat, you don't need to get involved." She looked at him. "I already am." I spoke quietly. Over 7 years, I transferred $412,000 to my parents. Those funds were used to cover household expenses, personal purchases, and Lucas's business. Elaine cut in. "You offered that money." "Yes," I said, "and you misrepresented it." Richard finally spoke. "Elaine." She shot him a look. I continued. "Those transfers were later cited to support a will revision that excluded me on the grounds of financial independence." Silence. Natalie turned to Lucas. "Is that true?" He hesitated. I didn't know the details. "That's not an answer," she said. Elaine leaned forward. "We did what was best for the family." "For Lucas," I corrected. Elaine's voice rose. "You've always resented him." I met her gaze. No. I resented being invisible. That landed. Natalie stood. "If this house is being transferred using money that didn't belong to you, I need to know." Elaine's tone sharpened. "This is not your concern." "It is if my future is built on it," Natalie replied. She turned to me. "What happens now?" I answered honestly. "That depends on what they choose." Elaine laughed. "You think you have leverage?" "Yes," I said, "because you already used mine." Lucas exploded. "This is insane! You're threatening to sue your own family!" I looked at him. "You're benefiting from fraud." The word hung in the air. Richard stood abruptly. Enough. Everyone turned to him. We're done pretending, he said. His voice shook, but it didn't break. Elaine, you crossed a line. She stared at him. Don't do this. You let our daughter carry this for years, he said. And you taught our son to expect it. Elaine's composure cracked. I did what I had to do. Richard shook his head. You did what was convenient. Natalie picked up her coat. I need time. Lucas grabbed her arm. Wait, she pulled free. No, she turned to me. Thank you for telling the truth. I nodded. When the door closed behind her, the room felt smaller. Elaine rounded on me. Are you happy now? I considered the question. No, I said, but I'm done. She looked at Richard. Fix this. He didn't move. I won't, he said. Elaine's face changed then. Not anger. Calculation. This isn't over, she said to me. I know, I replied. But it's no longer private. I stood and reached for my bag. As I headed for the door, Elaine called after me. You don't know what you're risking. I paused. I do, I said. And I'm choosing it. Outside, the air was cold and clean. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A message from Margaret. They just requested mediation. That means pressure is working. I smiled. They were trying to contain the damage. But damage only spreads when it's hidden. What I planned next would make sure it wasn't. And when it was done, there would be no folder thick enough to put it back. Mediation sounds gentle when people say it out loud. A neutral room, a calm professional, coffee cups that never get touched. The promise that everyone will be reasonable if given the chance. Margaret Liu didn't sugarcoat it. They don't want peace, she told me over the phone. They want control back. Mediation is just a pause button. Good, I said. I need time too. The session was scheduled for Thursday morning in a downtown office building near the Loop. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, art that meant nothing. Elaine Whitman arrived dressed for court, not compromise. Tailored blazer, pearl earrings, the version of herself she wore when she wanted to look credible. Richard Whitman sat beside her, quieter than usual, smaller. Lucas came alone. Natalie Brooks was noticeably absent. That detail mattered more than anything else. The mediator, a woman named Judith Myers, introduced herself and explained the rules. No interruptions, no raised voices. Confidential. Elaine nodded along, hands folded, already performing cooperation. Claire, Judith said, would you like to start by explaining your concerns? I spoke calmly. Numbers, dates, facts. No adjectives. Elaine sighed heavily when I finished. This is all very dramatic. Judith raised a hand gently. Elaine, please respond to the substance. Elaine smiled tightly. Claire is successful, independent. She chose to help. We never forced her. I looked at Judith. I agree. I wasn't forced. Elaine relaxed slightly. I was trained, I continued, conditioned, and then excluded based on that conditioning. Elaine's smile faltered. Lucas leaned forward. What do you want, Claire? Say it plainly. I want 3 things, I said. First, written acknowledgement that my financial contributions were material and ongoing. Second, removal of those contributions from any justification used to exclude me from inheritance. Third, a pause on all asset transfers until this is resolved. Elaine laughed softly. You're asking to rewrite history. No, I replied. I'm asking you to stop rewriting it. Judith took notes. Richard finally spoke. Elaine, we need to consider this. She shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. This is extortion, Elaine said. She's threatening to embarrass us. Judith looked up. Claire? I'm correcting the record, I said. Embarrassment is a side effect, not a strategy. The room went quiet. Judith cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss settlement options. Elaine leaned forward. We're willing to offer Claire a cash gift, a one-time amount, to resolve this. Margaret had warned me about this. How much? I asked. Elaine named a number. It was less than 10% of what I'd given. I didn't react. Lucas watched my face, waiting for relief. I shook my head. No. Elaine stiffened. You're being unreasonable. No, I said. You're being consistent, Judith interjected. Claire, what would you consider reasonable? I met Elaine's eyes. Transparency. Elaine scoffed. You want to punish us. I leaned back. You've confused punishment with consequence. The session ended without agreement. As we stood to leave, Elaine pulled me aside. "You think you're so principled," she said quietly, "but you're going to lose everything." I smiled faintly. I already lost what mattered. She didn't understand that. Outside, Margaret waited. "They offered money," she said. "Yes." "You declined." "Yes." She nodded. "Good. That means we proceed." "What's next?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "Now we request formal discovery." The word felt heavy, legal, final. That night, Lucas called me. "I need you to stop," he said without greeting. "I need you to listen," I replied. "Natalie moved out," he said. "She says she needs space." I waited. "She's asking questions about the house," he continued. "About the loan." I said nothing. "She thinks the foundation is rotten," he said finally. I exhaled slowly. "It is." He lowered his voice. "Mom says you're doing this because you're jealous." I laughed once. "Of what?" He didn't answer. "I didn't want this," he said. "You didn't stop it," I replied. There was a long pause. "What if I give it back?" he asked quietly. I closed my eyes. "Give what back?" "The house," he said. "If I walk away." That surprised me. "Is that your idea?" I asked. "No," he said. "It's Natalie's." I considered it. The timing, the leverage. "That wouldn't fix this," I said. "It would just hide it again." He sighed. "Then what will?" "The truth," I said. "On paper. For everyone." He hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, Margaret forwarded me an email. Elaine Whitman had filed a preemptive petition to finalize the asset transfer. She was trying to outrun discovery. Margaret called immediately. "She's panicking." "Good," I said. "We need to move fast," she said. "If the transfer completes, it complicates things." "What do you need from me?" "Authorization," she said, "to file an injunction." I didn't hesitate. "Do it." By Friday afternoon, the filing was complete. The transfer was frozen. Elaine left me a voicemail that night. Her voice was no longer controlled. "You've gone too far," she said. "This will destroy us." I listened once, then deleted it. Because destruction implies something solid being broken. What was happening wasn't destruction, it was exposure. And once something is exposed, it can never be folded back into the dark. The next move wouldn't come from Elaine. It would come from someone who had stayed quiet too long. And when he finally spoke, it would change the shape of everything. The call came from a number I almost didn't recognize. My grandmother's house phone. Margaret Liu had warned me that once discovery was filed, people who'd been silent would start to surface. Truth has a way of loosening things that have been wedged shut for years. "Claire," a man said carefully, "it's your uncle, my mother's younger brother, Daniel Whitman. He lived in Madison, Wisconsin. Quiet, unmarried, rarely mentioned." Elaine described him as unreliable, emotional, not good with money. All the usual disqualifiers. "I didn't know you still had this number," I said. "I didn't know if I should call," he replied, "but your name came up." "How?" I asked. "I got served," he said. I closed my eyes. "Served with what?" "A subpoena," Daniel said. "They want me to testify about the money, about what your mother told me over the years." That made my chest tighten. "What did she tell you?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "That you were helping because you felt guilty, that you didn't want a house, that you were happy to support Lucas." I didn't interrupt. "And," he continued, "that you didn't want credit." I laughed softly. "Of course." There was a pause. "I didn't believe her," Daniel said. That surprised me. "Why not?" I asked. "Because she said the same things about your grandmother," he replied. The room felt suddenly very still. "Tell me," I said. Daniel's voice steadied. "When my mother was alive, Elaine controlled everything. Money, information, access. She told us who needed help and who didn't. She told us who was grateful and who was selfish. I thought of every time I'd been described in my absence. She convinced Mom to sign over parts of her pension early," he continued. "Said it would simplify things. Said it was temporary." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" I asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. "By the time Mom realized what she'd signed," he said finally, "it was too late." That night, I sent Margaret everything. The next morning, she called. "This changes things," she said. "How?" I asked. "It establishes pattern," she replied. "Control, misrepresentation, intent." I leaned back. "What do you need?" "Permission," she said, to depose him formally. Do it, I said. The deposition was scheduled for the following week. Elaine found out within hours. She showed up at Daniel's apartment that same night. He told me later how it went. She arrived with tears already formed, talked about betrayal, about family loyalty, about how I'd turned everyone against her. She told me you were unstable, Daniel said quietly, that you were exaggerating. And? I asked. And I told her to leave. I smiled. 2 days later, Richard Whitman called me again. I didn't know, he said, about your mother and my mother. I know, I replied. I should have, he said. I just didn't ask. No one ever does, I said. That's how it works. He swallowed. Elaine wants me to fight this. And you? I asked. He was quiet. I don't know how to fix it, he said. You can't, I replied. You can only stop protecting it. That landed. The deposition transcript came back fast. Daniel was calm, clear, specific. He described conversations, dates, phrases Elaine repeated over decades. Claire doesn't need anything. She's strong. Lucas needs stability. It's easier if one person handles the money. Margaret smiled when she read it. This is the hinge, she said. Meanwhile, Natalie Brooks resurfaced. She emailed me directly. I didn't recognize the address at first. Claire, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I need to understand what I was walking into. Can we talk? We met at a coffee shop near the river. She looked tired, determined. I postponed the wedding, she said without preamble. I nodded. That makes sense. I asked for the loan documents, she continued. Lucas didn't have them. Because they're not his, I said. She nodded slowly. I grew up in a family business. I know what it looks like when someone is being used as collateral. I studied her. What do you want? The truth, she said. All of it. I gave it to her. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back. Elaine offered me money, she said. I wasn't surprised. To stay, Natalie added, to smooth things over. I met her eyes. And? I said no, she replied. If this is how she treats her own daughter, I don't want her near mine. That mattered more than any document. When discovery resumed, Elaine's tone changed. She stopped posturing, started deflecting. Margaret pressed harder. Emails, texts, financial trails. Then something unexpected happened. Thomas Keller withdrew as their attorney. Conflict of interest, he cited. Margaret laughed when she told me. He doesn't want to be in the room when this breaks, she said. A new attorney came in, younger, nervous. The tone shifted from defense to damage control. Elaine requested another meeting. This time, not mediation. Family. I declined. 2 weeks later, Margaret called me with news. They're offering to revise the will, she said. Equal split. Formal acknowledgement of your contributions. I closed my eyes. And the house? I asked. Removed from immediate transfer, she said. Lucas would need to purchase it outright. I considered it. And the records? I asked. They'll issue a written correction, she said. Tax amendments included. I thought of Daniel, of Natalie, of the long pattern finally visible. Get it in writing, I said. Then we'll talk. As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A message from Elaine. I know you think this is about money, but it's about family. I stared at it, then deleted it, because I finally understood something she never would. Family isn't what you say when you're cornered. It's what you do when no one is watching. And the final move wasn't going to be hers. It was going to be mine. And it would be public. The revised offer arrived on a Wednesday morning, printed on firm letterhead and delivered by email and courier, as if the extra paper could make it feel more sincere. Margaret Liu read it first. They're conceding more than I expected, she said. But there's a catch. There's always a catch, I replied. She forwarded the attachment. On the surface, it looked clean. An equal split of the estate. Formal acknowledgement of my financial contributions. A corrected accounting filed with the IRS. The immediate transfer of the Naperville house suspended indefinitely. And then I saw it. A clause buried near the end. Neutral language. Polite phrasing. Confidentiality. Elaine Whitman wanted silence. No public filings beyond what was required. No statements. No disclosures to extended family. No explanation that contradicted the revised record. In exchange, they would resolve matters amicably. I didn't react right away. What happens if I sign this? I asked. Margaret was quiet for a moment. You get what you're owed. Quietly. And if I don't? She didn't hesitate. We proceed. Discovery continues. Depositions expand. Your mother's pattern becomes public record. I looked out the window at the river again. Barges still moving slow, unbothered. What would you do? I asked. Margaret smiled faintly. I don't get to decide. But if you're asking professionally, the leverage is yours. That afternoon, Richard Whitman called. His voice was different now, stripped of authority, almost careful. Elaine thinks this will end things, he said. It will, I replied. One way or another. She's afraid, he added. I know, I said. Fear is familiar to her. He hesitated. She thinks you want to punish her. I considered that. No, I want accuracy. There was a pause. She won't survive public scrutiny, he said quietly. I closed my eyes. She built her life on avoiding it. That evening, I met Daniel Whitman again. My uncle. The man Elaine had spent decades discrediting. We sat in a quiet bar near his apartment. No music, no crowd. She called me, he said. Asked me to recant. I raised an eyebrow. And? I told her I already told the truth, he replied. There's nothing to recant. He took a sip of his drink. She said you're tearing the family apart. I smiled faintly. Families that rely on lies don't fall apart. They collapse. He nodded. You know what she's really afraid of? I waited. People finally comparing notes, he said. That's always been her weakness. That night, I drafted my response. Not to the offer, to the story. Margaret had warned me to think carefully. Once this moved beyond attorneys, it couldn't be pulled back. I didn't post online. I didn't leak documents. I didn't call relatives to gossip. I sent a single email. It went to a small group. Aunts, uncles, cousins. People who'd heard about the conflict, but didn't know the shape of it. It was brief, factual, calm. I explained my contributions, the misrepresentation, the correction in progress. I attached nothing. I accused no one. I ended with one sentence. I'm sharing this because silence has been expensive for me, and I'm done paying for it. Within an hour, replies started coming in. Confusion, shock, apologies. One message stood out. From my cousin, Laura Whitman. Is this why Mom always said you didn't help? She told us you refused. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Margaret. Her reply was immediate. That breaks the confidentiality clause, without breaking the law. Good. The next morning, Elaine showed up at my building again. This time, security stopped her. She waited in the lobby, rigid, arms crossed. I agreed to meet her there. She stood the moment she saw me. You promised discretion, she said. I promised nothing, I replied. You sent that email, she hissed. People are calling. Yes, I said. They are. You're humiliating me, she said, voice trembling now. Do you have any idea what this is doing to me? I looked at her. Really looked. I know exactly what it feels like to have your reputation shaped without your consent, I said. She flinched. This was supposed to end quietly, she said. It can, I replied, if you remove the clause. She stared at me. You want this public. I want it accurate, I said. Public is your word. She laughed, sharp and brittle. You think you're strong now. I am, I replied, because I'm not hiding. She stepped closer. If you do this, you lose your mother. I held her gaze. I lost her years ago. I just didn't admit it. She looked at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. I turned to leave. Claire, she called after me. You'll regret this. I paused. I already regretted the silence. Upstairs, I called Margaret. Remove the confidentiality clause, I said, or we proceed. Margaret didn't hesitate. I'll notify them. By evening, the response came. They refused. Elaine Whitman would rather risk exposure than release control. Margaret called me once more that night. Then we move forward, she said. Full discovery. Expanded witness list. I exhaled slowly. Do it. When I hung up, I felt something settle. Not relief. Readiness. Because once you choose daylight, you can't flinch when it arrives. And the next phase wasn't about documents or clauses anymore. It was about witnesses. People who had been quiet. People who had believed her. People who were about to realize they'd been used, too. Chapter 10 would not be a negotiation. it would be a reckoning. Discovery doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks, first through inboxes, then through conversations that stop mid-sentence, then through the subtle shift in how people look at you when they finally understand they were standing on the wrong side of something. The depositions were scheduled over 2 weeks. Elaine Whitman went last. That wasn't an accident. Margaret Liu wanted the record built before Elaine spoke. She wanted the contradictions to already exist on paper, waiting. Richard went first. He didn't fight. He didn't perform. He answered questions the way men do when they're exhausted from defending something they never believed in. Yes, he said, when asked about the transfers. Yes, when asked if Elaine handled finances exclusively. No, he hadn't reviewed the filings closely. No, he hadn't corrected the narrative when extended family repeated it. When the attorney asked why, Richard paused. I didn't want the argument, he said. That answer appeared 3 times in the transcript. Lucas went next. He came in defensive, overconfident. He tried to minimize, to redirect, to pretend the numbers were abstract, until Margaret asked a single question. Did you ever ask where the money came from? He hesitated. I assumed. That's not the question, Margaret said calmly. Did you ask? No, he said. And did you benefit from it? Yes. Silence. Natalie Brooks was subpoenaed as a third-party witness. She didn't have to be there. She chose to be. She spoke clearly, without malice, without emotion. She described the lone confusion, the pressure, the offer Elaine made to smooth things over. The moment she realized the foundation of the marriage being planned wasn't just unstable, but dishonest. I couldn't build a life on that, Natalie said. Elaine's attorney objected. The objection was overruled. Daniel Whitman went next. My uncle didn't raise his voice once. He described the pension, the paperwork, the patterns, the phrases Elaine used that sounded like care until you repeated them back slowly. She always framed control as protection, he said. Margaret asked him one last question. Do you believe Elaine intended to deceive? Daniel looked straight ahead. Yes. By the time Elaine's deposition began, the room had already turned. She arrived composed, chin lifted, hands steady. She'd worn that face for decades. Margaret didn't challenge it. She let Elaine speak. Elaine described sacrifice, burden, the difficulty of managing a family where one child needed more. She spoke of intentions, love, complexity. Then Margaret slid the first document across the table, an email Elaine had written to Thomas Keller 2 years earlier. In it, Elaine stated plainly that my financial support demonstrated I didn't need assets and that the house should secure Lucas's future before Claire changes her mind. Elaine's eyes flicked over the page. I don't recall writing that, she said. Margaret nodded. You sent it from your primary account. Elaine adjusted in her seat. The next document followed. A text message to a cousin, complaining that I was stingy and always too busy to help, sent the same week my transfer increased by $2,000. Elaine's lips tightened. Margaret didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse. She let the words exist. Do you consider those statements accurate? Margaret asked. Elaine hesitated. I was frustrated, she said. So you misrepresented the truth, Margaret replied. Elaine bristled. I expressed an opinion. Margaret nodded. And that opinion was used to shape how others perceived your daughter. Elaine leaned back. She never corrected it. Margaret smiled slightly, because she didn't know. The room went quiet. The final document was the hardest. A draft will, earlier than the one I'd been told about. In it, my name appeared once, as a footnote. Elaine stared at it longer than the others. That was preliminary, she said. Yet you signed it, Margaret replied. Elaine's composure cracked just enough. I did what I thought was best, she said sharply. Someone had to manage things. Margaret closed the folder. No further questions, she said. The silence afterward wasn't dramatic. It was final. 2 days later, the summary memo circulated. Not publicly, yet, but enough people had seen enough. The extended family didn't call to argue anymore. They called to apologize. One aunt admitted she'd repeated Elaine's stories without question. A cousin said she'd felt uncomfortable for years, but didn't know why. The narrative had shifted. Elaine felt it immediately. She sent one last message. You've made your point. Let's end this. Margaret read it and looked at me. She wants to settle, she said. No confidentiality this time. What are the terms? I asked. Full correction filed. Public record amended. Written acknowledgement distributed to family. Equal inheritance, no conditions. Independent trustee. I considered it. And accountability? I asked. Margaret tilted her head. What does that look like to you? I thought about the years, the quiet, the training. I want a statement, I said. From her, in her own words. Margaret nodded slowly. That can be arranged. The statement arrived 3 days later. It wasn't an apology. Elaine didn't know how to write those, but it was factual. She acknowledged misrepresentation, control, decisions made without transparency, harm caused. She didn't name intent. She didn't have to. The record did that for her. I signed the settlement, not because she deserved closure, but because I did. The following Sunday, I walked past my parents' house. The lights were on, curtains drawn. For the first time, I didn't wonder what they were saying about me. I already knew. The truth had moved faster than they ever expected, and the final chapter wasn't going to be about what they lost. It was going to be about what I chose next. Because revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like walking forward, with nothing left to hide. And that kind of freedom changes everything. The settlement didn't end things the way people imagine endings. There was no explosion, no apology tour, no family dinner where everything softened into something almost normal. What it ended was ambiguity. The documents were filed, the corrections entered public record, the will amended and placed under independent trusteeship. The house in Naperville remained exactly where it was, but it no longer felt like an inheritance. It felt like a liability, waiting for its owner to decide what to do with it. Elaine Whitman didn't call after that. Neither did Lucas. Richard did, once. 2 weeks later. A voicemail. His voice careful, restrained, like someone learning a new language too late in life. I'm trying, he said. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I listened to it once. Then I archived it. Work became quiet in the best way. Denise Porter pulled me into her office on a Friday afternoon and closed the door. You handled that well, she said. I raised an eyebrow. You know, she smiled. I know what happens when someone chooses transparency over comfort. It changes how they show up. She slid a folder across the desk. A new role. Expanded authority. A seat I hadn't been offered before because no one thought I'd ask for it. I'm ready, I said. She nodded. I figured. At night, I slept differently. Not better. Deeper. The kind of sleep that comes when you're not bracing for impact. Still, there were moments. Small ones. When my hand hovered over my phone before I remembered there was no one to call. That habit took years to form. It didn't disappear quietly. One afternoon, I ran into Natalie Brooks by accident. A bookstore near the river. Same aisle. Essays. She smiled when she saw me. Not guarded, just real. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. We stood there for a moment, the way people do when there's history, but no obligation to perform it. I moved, she said. New place, smaller, calmer. That sounds right, I said. She hesitated. Lucas reached out. And? I asked. I didn't answer, she said. Some patterns don't need a second reading. I nodded. She looked at me carefully. I wanted to say something. Back then, I waited. Thank you, she said, for not letting me build a life on someone else's silence. You would have figured it out, I replied. Maybe, she said. But timing matters. We parted without promises. That felt important. The extended family adjusted slowly. Some reached out with genuine curiosity. Others with guilt disguised as friendliness. A few never contacted me again. I didn't chase any of it. The story had stabilized. Not in their version. In mine. Then, in late spring, Margaret Liu called. There's one loose end, she said. I leaned back. There always is. The house, she said. Richard wants to sell. Elaine doesn't. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course she doesn't. She claims emotional attachment, Margaret continued, but she no longer has sole authority. What does Richard want? I asked. To start over, she said. Smaller place, different city. And Lucas? I asked. Margaret paused. He's not in a position to buy. Not without help. I exhaled slowly. And what's being asked of me? I said. Nothing. Margaret replied, unless you want a voice. I considered it. For a long time, I'd been trained to stay out of decisions so I couldn't disrupt them. Now, I was being invited in. "What happens if I say nothing?" I asked. "The house sells," she said. Elaine resents it. Richard moves. Lucas adjusts. "And if I speak?" I asked. Margaret smiled faintly. "Then you choose how the last piece moves." I asked for the weekend. On Sunday morning, I drove to Naperville, not to the house, to the street. I parked across from it and sat there longer than necessary. I remembered leaving for college with everything I owned in the back seat of a borrowed car. Remembered sending money back with no ceremony. Remembered being described as difficult, distant, selfish for wanting room to breathe. The house had never been mine, but it had been built on me. That distinction mattered. I called Margaret. "Tell Richard I won't block the sale," I said. "But I want one condition." She listened. "Put it in writing," she said. The condition was simple. Elaine Whitman would not be allowed to frame the sale as a sacrifice made for me. No martyrdom, no narrative, the truth only. Margaret laughed softly. "You've learned." The agreement was signed. The house went on the market 3 weeks later. Elaine didn't attend the open house. Richard did. Lucas didn't come at all. The for sale sign felt symbolic in a way I didn't expect. Not because something was ending, because something had already ended, quietly, months ago. The sale closed fast. Good neighborhood. Good timing. Elaine moved in with a friend across town. Temporary, she told people. Lucas took a job out of state. Contract-based. No safety net this time. Richard downsized. He sent me a photo of his new place. Small balcony, plants. "Looks peaceful," he wrote. It did. I replied with a single sentence. "I hope it feels honest." That night, I sat alone in my apartment and opened a new document. No spreadsheets, no legal notes, just blank space. I started writing things down. What I would no longer tolerate. What I would no longer explain. What I would no longer carry. It felt less like a list and more like a return. There was one item I hadn't decided yet. One choice still waiting. It involved Elaine. Not reconciliation. Not forgiveness. Something quieter. Something final. I closed the document without typing it. Some decisions need silence before they're named. And the last chapter of this story wasn't going to be about them at all. It was going to be about what I did with the space they left behind, and whether I was finally ready to use it. The message from Elaine Whitman arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. No subject line. No greeting. "I heard you're doing well." I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. For years, I had imagined this moment. The apology that never came. The justification that always did. The version of her that might finally see me without measuring what I could provide. This message was none of those things. It was a probe. I closed my laptop without replying. That night, I walked home instead of taking the train. The city was loud in the way that reminds you you're alive. I passed couples arguing softly, a woman laughing too hard on her phone, a man walking his dog like the dog was the only thing keeping him upright. Life continuing. Indifferent. Honest. When I got home, I opened the document I'd started weeks earlier, the one with no numbers, no evidence, just boundaries. I reread what I'd written and added the final line. "I will not explain myself to people who benefit from misunderstanding me." Then I saved it. The next morning, I replied to Elaine. "I'm well. I hope you are too. I'm not reopening the past. Please respect that." I didn't soften it. I didn't invite response. She wrote back within minutes. "I'm your mother. We should talk." I didn't answer, and that was it. Not dramatic, not cruel, just done. Weeks passed, then months. The absence didn't ache the way I'd been told it would. It didn't hollow me out or leave a shape I kept tripping over. It felt like walking without carrying something heavy you'd forgotten was there. At work, I took the seat I'd been offered. At first, people deferred out of habit. Then they adjusted. I spoke less, decided faster, trusted myself more. One afternoon, Denise Porter stopped by my office. "You've changed," she said. I smiled. I stopped negotiating. She nodded. "That tracks." In late fall, I hosted Thanksgiving for the first time. Not a performance. No table big enough to seat ghosts. Just a few people who had shown up when things were uncomfortable. Colleagues, friends. One cousin who had reached out not to apologize, but to listen. We ate too much, laughed without checking who heard. No one asked about my parents. I didn't offer. After dinner, I stepped onto the balcony with a glass of wine and watched the city lights come on one by one. I thought about the word revenge. People expect it to be loud, public, punishing. But what I learned is this. Real revenge isn't destruction, it's detachment. It's refusing to carry the story someone else wrote about you. It's choosing accuracy over approval, even when accuracy costs you a seat at a familiar table. Elaine Whitman still tells her version, I'm sure, that I'm cold, difficult, too focused on work, that I chose distance. She's not wrong about the last part. I did choose distance. I chose it the way you choose air when you've been holding your breath for too long. Lucas never reached out again. I heard through someone else that he's doing fine, or saying he is. That used to matter to me. Now it's just information. Richard sends a message every few months. Neutral, polite, sometimes kind. We are what we are, and that's enough. The will is settled, the records corrected, the house sold, the family story rewritten, not by me, but by the truth finally being allowed to sit in the room. What stayed behind wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. I learned that love without respect is just control in softer language. That generosity without boundaries is an open invitation to be erased. And that being chosen starts with choosing yourself. If you're listening to this and recognizing pieces of your own life, I want you to know something. You're not imagining it. You're not too sensitive, and you're not wrong for wanting your name to stay attached to what you've built. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight louder. It's to step back and let the truth do the work. If you were in my place, would you have answered that last message? Or would you have let silence finish the sentence? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And if this story stayed with you, if it felt uncomfortably familiar or quietly validating, like and subscribe. There are more stories like this coming. Stories about boundaries, delayed justice, and what happens when the tables finally turn. You don't owe anyone your silence, and you don't need permission to walk away. Thank you for listening.